can be set up however you want. For those of you who are using Microsoft, depending on what license you have, you already may have access to Teams. So it can be a really good place to both get work done and continue to kind of build that community while you're all remote.
Yep, definitely worth thinking a little bit about what channels you want to have. And honestly, I think somebody should sort of be in charge of that because people want to make channels, and I think you want to keep an eye on that and have some thought process to it. For us, something that didn't end up working that well was if you get too granular, like our Go Live, New Mexico is going live this weekend. That channel then gets archived and put away after the hot topic is done. But some of the smaller projects we tried to make channels for, it just didn't live. So there's always an analysis and balance, I think, to those things.
I definitely agree. And I think that that's super important for bigger groups too. Like if you've got 100, 150, 200 people in a Slack or Teams channel, like you really want to make sure that there's some sort of moderation, at least in the beginning, to make sure that there's some structure for folks.
Yep. Great, thank you. And so we're going to quickly go through some of the tools, and then I actually we'll pause for a minute and see if people have feedback. This is, again, there are lots of other tools that do these things. These are ones that Anna and I worked on and cover most of the folks who use LegalServer, I think. So we got most of them covered. Zoom is what I'm using right now. Overall, our experience has been it's more it works on more platforms than some of the other things we've tried. We also have the fancy Google Hangouts. Currently, we're not replacing it. We're not replacing Zoom with that. Some of that has to do with the ability to record, which I forgot to press record early on. I find just the way Google or Zoom lets me store those recordings is way easier to handle. It automatically splits the audio and video. So occasionally there's something where I just want to send the audio or share that and not the video. We can do that. Hangouts, I think they're getting there. It's actually, I think it's Google Meet, whatever. They keep changing the name of it. But anything to add on these, Anna?
Nope. I don't think so.
I will say this, and I know the phone is way down there. You may not, sorry phone companies, you may not need much in the way of a soft phone. At this point, our team is on oodles and oodles of calls with clients every single week. I mean, we're talking hundreds of hours. Some of our individual workers are on 35 hours of meetings a week. None of them are by telephone. And nowadays, if Ivy called me on the phone, unless he's at the airport, chances are we at some point switch over to Zoom. So just think about that as we get into the remote, provisioning what software you're going to use. If you can get staff used to using this, they will use this instead of the phone. Even Zoom says it's end-to-end encrypted. So I would say you could, let's say, email client, say we want to talk at 2. A worker could have a Zoom conversation with the client and never use a phone. Crazy, something to think about.
And I think one thing that's important to think about there as well, we don't necessarily want people like going out and spending oodles of money on testing different tools, right? There's free trials for a lot of these, but also like use kind of what you see the limits of what you have right now. So like some voice over IP companies have soft phones that allow for video chat or allow for physical typing chat, even if it's just one-on-one, allow for those like virtual conference rooms. So really take a look at some of the advanced features of the tools that you're already using and that your staff is already used to using, while also looking at some of these other ones as well.
I can't imagine having a remote distributed team without having video conferencing. Even right now, like I'm trying to pay attention to the participants window, and a meeting this big, I probably should have somebody just monitoring participants. But I can't imagine trying to have for long periods of time a team where you're just on the phone, just voice. It's so much more personal, and our cultures are changing where people are getting more comfortable showing their faces on meetings. I'm going to actually flip right over to some web conferencing tips. The conveners need to learn to use the mute all button, which I did. If you put, you have a calendar, attach the webinar information to the calendar item. Sounds small, makes a really big difference. oh my God, if I hear one more time, what's a call-in information? Where's a webinar? That's it's going on my tombstone. So we really try to make sure that every invite to every calendar item, you just attach it right in the description if you want to. For new people, I have found sometimes when we are working with a client who hasn't done this a lot, I will stress the fact that every webinar has a phone number attached to it too. So at the very worst, you've got somebody who probably has perfectly fine audio and they're talking to you and no, they don't see your screen share, whatever, but they don't feel like lost on a little island because they're not part of whatever is going on. So especially folks who aren't comfortable with the technology, just tell them call in on the phone. And you may find people who have bad bandwidth, it may be better for them to talk on the phone and get nice clear audio because whatever network they're working on is not awesome. So a little tip I suggest, if you're the change agent in your agency, is think about making at least one meeting a week that everybody has to go to and do it using your new tool. That'll kind of help nudge people along. And I hope you will testify that I do this. That attendee list is a really helpful way to scroll through and see who's being left behind in your conversation, because some of us, like this guy, may talk too much and not let other people participate. And so I do this, though. I'll at least go around and say, hey, I haven't heard from you, person. Speaking of, anything to interject so far here on this list, Anna?
On the web conferencing tips, no, I think you've got it covered. I think that a lot of us saw those tweets and memes going around as soon as this first came out that we're about to learn all of those meetings that could have been emails, and that's true. But I think that we can also still have like really good, effective meetings with the right tools and the right amount of common sense.
Xander taught me this one: schedule everything to end 10 minutes before the hour, because otherwise, do you have a second to write down what the tasks were, what the assignments were before your next meeting? Because I promise, if you have a really remote operation, you will eventually have meetings that just butt right up into each other because you've got to talk to people. So I love that. Thank you, Xander. And I did want to point out, dear conveners, please learn to run meetings well. Please. Please, please, please. I know, I'm sure I can be better. I know I have things, but I actually do try to get better and better. And it's really painful when you're on a webinar meeting, especially because you can't read their body language, that people are disappointed that you have gone way too long into explaining something. So learn to have an agenda, even if it's a brief agenda. Try not to let people dominate the meeting. Whatever there's all kinds of philosophies, but at least have one and not just like, hey, we're having a meeting now. What we're going to talk about? Oh, what we're going to send? Waste of time. So should we pause there, Anna? You think, or keep on cruising?
Yeah, let's keep on cruising.
Okay. If you have a comment, feel free to add that in chat. And I don't think I see any hands raised, so we will keep on rolling. Calendaring, oh my goodness. I don't think with a remote team, there's no way we could do it without the calendar. I have a slide here that has a little picture of the calendar. Hold on. Oh, there we go. That is that's just a little tiny blur, intentionally blurry, of our calendar. It is the policy here at LegalServer that if you work, when you work here, that if there's a gap on your calendar, that means it's available and other people can schedule you, even if you're their supervisor. So if you're going to be gone for a significant period of time, that needs to be on your calendar. And y'all use Outlook. Anything to add on those?
Yeah, I think it's just all about the expectation setting there, right? And making sure that everything is shared out in the way that's expected, and that you're utilizing, Outlook is just as straightforward as Google Calendar when it comes to calendaring. So nothing there as far as difference, but more of just the expectation setting and making sure that everybody's on the same page as far as exactly what you were just saying, Jeff.
A little hint here, think hard before making like group calendars. At least in Google, I think it's a little squirrely to make like a office calendar. For the most part, we have individual calendars, and you toggle on and off who you need to see rather than trying to make everybody in this office calendar. I know that sounds odd. Experiment with it and see before you try to make like a, Buffalo office calendar that is its own thing and a fake user, because that's not really it's not how Google wants you to do it. You got to have a place to share files. Overall, I think we're all saying use a good cloud methodology. If you are storing them locally inside your walls, I would say you probably do need to get into a bunch of VPN stuff, and chances are, I'm sorry, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Chances are, if your files are in a box in a closet, they're probably not as secure, believe it or not, as they would be in one of the good cloud storage places, provided that you're using good security practices otherwise. Sharing, and I love it that you can, their search is getting better and better. So even if somebody puts it in the wrong drive, you can still find it. Do you want to say anything about OneNote or Planner?
Yeah, just real quick. So for folks that are in the Microsoft environment now, take a look at the tools that are there. I think OneNote and Planner are often overlooked by folks, and they just allow for like that coordinated work, right? Planner is really similar to Trello, if folks are familiar with that. And again, it just allows you to continue to do the work that you're doing in a shared cloud-based space with a tool that everybody already has access to. I think it's constantly a warning that I'm giving when I'm talking in webinars where I'm talking about tools like this, is that there are so many tools out there, and it's hard to kind of pick one. But now that's super important, because now that we are going to be relying on these cloud-based tools, to really pick one and decide on it as a team and stick with it is critical.
Yep, and what about phones, Anna?
Yeah, phones, I think, your IT folks or your IT consultants will know if you have access to soft phones, but if you have a voice over IP system, many of them have applications both for your desktop or for your cell phone that allow you to make and receive calls from your work number. So, the technology does exist. If you think it's something that you guys may have access to, but are not currently using, definitely talk to your IT folks about getting that set up, because it can be really powerful and really useful for remote service delivery.
It can. I'm gonna go with this radical. I'm a contrarian. I'm gonna go with this idea that maybe you don't even need extensions and deal with all the phone stuff if you really get into one of the other web conferencing tools. But I do want to say, well-made shared spreadsheets can do so much. There are a number of like fancy planning devices that we've played with, and 7 times out of 10 we come back to it carefully. You can make them pretty. You can make spreadsheets pretty. You can make them really have the information jump out at you what it's doing. A shared spreadsheet can solve a whole bunch of problems. We did want to talk about equipment just a minute. Michelle, if you're paying attention, who sounds better, me or Anna? She sounds better, but audio wise, who do y'all think has a better, clearer audio? I'm curious. Somebody comment on there in the chat and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, both sound pretty good.
Do we? Good. And I'm using my webcam. And what are you using, Anna?
I'm using a headset that's designed for call centers.
Got it. So she's using a headset, which is totally cool, right? I'm using basically kind of like headphones and my webcam. So my point is this. A lot of this can be done with just a webcam. If you got to talk to people a heck of a lot, though. What I'm thinking about is, what do y'all have to actually buy to make this work? Webcams work pretty well. And they have some noise canceling in them too. I found, if you're going to rely on this, unfortunately, people need to think about their routers at home. And it might be worth, spending a few bucks to get a router that isn't 9 years old. And then you got to have decent bandwidth. I'll note, especially with people having their kids home and that sort of thing, that other people streaming, even if they're just streaming something that doesn't seem that fancy, it just takes some of the bandwidth away, and it will even if you have a good internet connection, it may impact video conferencing. So you have to kick some folks off of their favorite music streaming devices. All right, we talked about real-time collaboration. Notification fatigue, Anna.
So this is one of the things that I've been hearing from a lot of my friends and family who are starting to work remotely for the first time, is that all of a sudden, now that they're using Slack and Outlook and their personal notifications as well, they're starting to be like very overwhelmed by all of the information that's coming in, especially over the excitement of a new tool and like, oh, we have this way to real-time communicate with everybody on our team. Like, I better at this, at here this person every time I need their attention and things like that. So just be aware that like that's a thing that can happen. It's okay. I think that a lot of us who work remotely a lot have kind of worked our way through this. I think that it's also something that we're all used to just from all the push notifications that we get on our cell phones daily. And it is okay to turn notifications off, right? And it also is back to expectation setting, right? Just because you ping me doesn't mean I necessarily may be able to get back to you right away, and set those channels for like, if this is an emergency, like here's how to contact me, rather than like, I think this is an emergency or I just want to talk, right? And making sure that those expectations are clear so that you don't get the emergencies lost in the noise.
Right. So how do I know before I ping Anna, when I at Anna, I want to talk to you. How do I know that she's busy doing something else? Couple ways. You could do the little status thing in Slack or in Teams. You also could look at the calendar and see if she's in a meeting before you're like, why aren't you getting back to me? So all those things sort of flow together. Speaking of chat etiquette, what else should we do and not do, Anna?
I think that right in both Teams and Slack, there's ways to call people out, right? Either the entire channel if you want to bring everybody's attention to one thing, or call a specific person out. There's also private chat functionalities for that if you want to have individual conversations. But over to the don't column, I think it's really important that if the conversation goes to project-based decisions, you want to make sure you bring that back out of your private chat so that you can keep that history of the decisions that were made. And don't be calling the entire team every time you post something, right? You don't want to create a culture of people only need to go over to Slack or Teams whenever they're summoned, right? You want to create a culture of this is a living, breathing tool that people are always in and always checking. And again, you can turn the notifications off, but you really want it to be one of those things that's just always open on a desktop.
It just becomes that way. So for those who haven't used it, you can do something in Slack. You can do something like at here and just hit return, and everyone who's signed in, who's in that channel, will get a notification in whichever way they've decided to get notifications, which could be an alert on their phone or whatever. So we don't try not to use all caps. Try not to add too much.
Yep.
We talked about web conferencing tips and having a good meeting. Should we look? Well, you know what? If you have a question or something, feel free to pop it in chat, and we will pause. I know we're talking a little bit quickly, but we are going to have some time for you to challenge us and ask questions at the end. But if something's burning, feel free to interrupt. Okay, for the newly remote worker, the first thing that everybody says is, "Oh my gosh, I could never work from home. Like I would just goof off and do other things." I promise that's not true. You don't have to be like from the, like whatever, my family in the Midwest, where if you're not working 92 hours a week, you're lazy and that sort of thing. You don't have to have that, drummed into you. There's just a lot to do, and if you have goals, like there's something you're supposed to do, like help a program get live by a certain date, or solve some problem, you just settle into it, and the motivation has not been that hard. Yes, there's distractions, but hopefully, we're all trying to build an environment where, our staff has goals to reach, like, close your cases in a timely fashion, or make sure you enter all your time every day, and not necessarily specific tasks where it's like, now I want you have to sit down and do these things. If you're a supervisor, it takes a lot more time to spell out individual tasks for everybody than it does to say, here's what we're going to try to to achieve. It really is not that hard. I don't know anybody. I actually don't know anybody who's gone to working at home who says, I just can't be motivated to do work. I'm so distracted all the time. Sounds like it's going to be a problem. It's not. There's suggestion to have boundaries about work time. Doesn't always work for me. I get up and sometimes I've been thinking about it in bed, and like I just come straight up here, sit down and get cranking it way too early in the morning because I'm trying to solve a problem. Which reminds us that we should, separate out some reward time for things that are going to distract you. Do you have any examples, Anna?
One of the, like I love to cook. I love to be in a nice, clean, and comfortable workspace, right? So though when I first started working from home, right, it was like the constant kind of distraction of those things. But if I made time in like mornings or afternoons or evenings to like set aside, and it's like, okay, like you can get that sourdough starter going, but you need to like make your time for it now, and then you get to work. So kind of making the time for you, for your family, for your spouse, for your roommate, for your partner, whoever, and making it clear that like this is my work time, or this is not my work time, this is my distraction time. And then when I'm in my box, that's my work time. And I know that can be really tough, especially right now. But yeah, making time for,
Sure.
as Michelle just pointed out, for the dog too. That's Gracie.
She's pretty cute. Sally asked, what's the best, Sally Curran in beautiful upstate New York asked, what's the best way to do inter-office chats within the Microsoft world? So isn't that Teams?
Yeah, I would check out Teams, Sally.
Microsoft would be very happy to hear you say that, Anna. I know they're trying to pump it, and I don't know. I think they love Michelle. So when in doubt, talk to Michelle. She'll hook you up with their board of directors. And change positions. I found I move around all day. Sometimes I go sit on the couch, whatever. Occasionally we get to go outside, but not as often as you think. And this is continue Anna's theme of creating a workspace.
Yeah, this is huge for me. I think the designated space where you can be productive. If you can be productive on your couch, like that's awesome, and I'm really happy for you. But like I cannot, and I know many people cannot. This is something that we're all kind of settling into, right? This is not a one-off. I'm working from home. So if it's possible, it's really important to find that designated space and make it comfy, right? Like I decided I wanted to splurge on an office chair because it's where I spend 10 hours of my day. So it better be nice and cushy. So, and making sure that your monitors are a good height, and just that you've created kind of that comfortable workspace. And your work bubble is something that I think is new given our current kind of situation, especially where people have family home. Like when I'm here at my desk, I'm working, and like this means that I am working. I'm joking with my husband, but we're probably going to end up we're sharing an office right now and having like an on-air light. So when one of us is on the phone, the on-air light is on, so we know not to distract each other or walk into each other's video range and whatnot, right? So, or with people with kids that are home, right? Like when I'm here, that means that I'm off limits unless there's an emergency. And I think that that's really important, just to feel like you're at work.
Well, and for a lot of the folks on this call, you're probably the point person kind of implementing some of this and advising your staff. I don't want to go too far down this path. I will just say, I'm sure you will find there's information about ergonomics available to you. Personally, I would be concerned if somebody who worked for my organization was working in the top one. I would also be concerned for their health. And believe it or not, can come up. So it might be worth distributing some things about what are good ergonomics for home, because you can control that a little bit at work, but it's real that people will have difficulties and if they're super uncomfortable and not be as productive at home. All right, speaking of policies and management, I talked a little bit about the calendar for us, and I'll be curious how you all handle this. If you're a supervisor, this is your anxiety. How the heck do I even know that they're in at work? And so for us, we have calendars is one of the things. I know what they have to do that week. Also, we'll want a method for reporting tasks done. Our team they just get their work done. Sometimes I have to remind them, please brag about what you did. Don't forget to tell us, like, hey, I did this awesome thing. That helps. And then, frankly, if your bubble is not green in Slack, you're probably not at work in my mind. So if I look down the list and somebody's not there, and it's 10 o'clock in the morning, I assume they're not feeling well, and I'm start to get worried. So, and what about y'all, Anna?
Yeah, so we on my team at Just Tech, we do have stand-ups first thing in the morning. I do have the consulting team is smaller, so that's not overly disruptive as far as workflow goes, but we have 15 minutes to just like check in, say hi, go through kind of what's on the agenda for the day, where we may need additional help. So that's like a very hands-on approach, but with a small team, it really works. And with a team who's working on multiple projects at the same time, it really works. I've also seen, so there's a small software company in New York City who has their employee handbook online, and they have, which I think is a good idea, they have a Slack channel for just in and out, and everybody has their own emoji, and you put your emoji when you come in and you put your emoji when you come out, when you leave. And so it's like a check-in, check-out, but in kind of like a fun, makes it like more fun for people, right? And if you really want to get more granular about making sure people are working, you can. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think it's just a supervision issue, right? Are the people that I supervise getting their work done, and are their clients happy? Great.
Yeah, but again, on the calendaring, for those of you who have to worry about the exempt versus non-exempt thing,
Yep.
If I were in that world, I would say you also have to put your lunch breaks and other required breaks on your calendar. I need to see them. That's what I would do personally. If you're not available for us, we just want to see that it's on the calendar. These things happen. And another challenge, and that, so right, when is somebody out, and how long does it take to go, get the mail? And it's not as big of a deal as it sounds like, because frankly, the people who just really aren't getting their work done and probably didn't when they're in the physical office, it becomes very apparent, and then you can deal with that however you deal with it. But it resolves the issue, right? Like, was that person, did they even do anything on Friday? Did you call them, or did you ping them and were you unable to reach them? And they say, oh, I was gone. Then you say, well, it wasn't on your calendar that you were out. So either way, there's a communication problem here. Speaking of, chat and email are different. You all know this from email fights that you've seen probably. I can't tell you how many times we've done it. Even me and my beloved founder and president, Ivy Ashton. There's times when it just gets a little tense in the chat, and we pick up the phone. And probably the only phone calls I have are when we're trying to talk about something difficult or clarify an intent on communication. So that is the reason I'm mentioning this in policies and whatnot, is because if my team was about to go mobile, I would tell them all this, because they're gonna make somebody angry. Somebody that takes something the wrong way, because it's just different to be entirely digital, and everybody's got to like tone down the sarcasm, not try to crack a funny joke. I know it sounds antiseptic, especially for those of you who know me, because that's not me, but the medium does not lend itself to people understanding exactly how you were feeling when you said it. What do you say, Anna?
Oh, I totally agree. And I think, again, it's just it's that expectation setting right out of the gate before something happens, and then you have to go back and reset expectations.
Yep. And there are all sorts of things folks can say, do, emojis they can use that people might take the wrong way if they don't know them, because they don't spend time with folks. So, you are what your existence is in digital land at some point. I love the idea of having regular check-ins. Go ahead, Anna. Tell me about regular check-ins. How does one make time for those exactly?
You just do. I mean, I find them really valuable. And even if it is, right, like we said here, even if you have to cancel, or even if it's like 5 minutes, like, hey, you good? Yep, yeah. Great. Talk to you tomorrow. Can be really crucial.
Absolutely. So this is from Xander one. The open doors was one of the coolest things Xander did. He does it for our clients at LegalServer, does it internally for our staff. There's just a time slot. And this is Xander is one of the busiest people I've ever seen. And he does it. So all of us should be able to, including me, which I need to get on the stick with that. He talks about, and you can multitask during the time if nobody shows up. Otherwise, I can't tell you how many times I've been on a meeting when Xander says, oh, yeah, actually, why don't you stop by during my open door hours and we'll resolve that. And then 14 other people don't have to listen to 2 people resolve a problem that may need a meeting, but there's already a meeting time set up. Love it. Brilliant. Highly encourage you to think about that if you're going remote. This, I love it. This did happen one time. I was just like, I just needed to have a beer. Sorry for LSE funded people. It was a rough week. It was a late Friday afternoon, and I had such a pleasant chat with a couple of folks that I work with, and it just took a lot of the pressure off of a rough week. And it was Xander's suggestion to formalize this a little bit, find the time, circulate the meeting invite. Oh, yes. Ask people to have their video on. They will resist, but it will make it much more personal. All right, and I've never done that. I have questions prepared to break the ice because I just needle people, and usually it works. Anything else, Anna, on these tips?
No, that's good. I think, our community is pretty social, very creative, right? I think I'm kind of excited to hear from folks as this all evolves and as remote work evolves on like how people found ways to keep this kind of social connection with their teams and with their colleagues, because I can see some pretty cool stuff coming out of that.
We've made a run at having a national technology Slack channel. I think I created one. Somebody else did too, and it went absolutely nowhere. But maybe this is going to be revolutionary because there'll be a channel you could jump into using the same software to just say hi to your nerdy friends. So, John Snell, are you here? I haven't had a chance to look through the participants list.
I'm here.
Great, awesome. So next we're going to talk about security. For those of you who are about to deploy a bunch of remote people, these are some things to think about. Go ahead, John.
All right, so the first thing you want to do is make sure that everyone's workstation is encrypted. This can be a little more challenging for people who aren't familiar with technology, so you'll have to support them a bit with the checks. On a Mac, the encryption is called File Vault. It is not on by default. And BitLocker on Windows. Most of them can be turned on with a couple of clicks. The next issue is multi-factor authentication, abbreviated here as MFA. If you have LegalServer set up with single sign-on, you'll want to enable that. If you have it, if you're using Google's tools or Microsoft tools for other things, it's a good idea to have that. It doesn't have to recheck every time, but that just prevents issues if their password gets leaked. It keeps people from getting into your system because then there's another factor that they need to get into the system. For their
which is typically,
MDM.
Sorry,
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, John. But yeah, and so typically a lot of times that's it may be that they text a number to a phone, but there are also, I really like the app version. So if I'm logging into, I go into log into G Suite or to Office 365. I'll use the Office 365 example. It asks me for basically a code, and there's a couple ways it can send it to my phone, or sometimes I use the it has I gotta blank this out. Oops, sorry, I'm gonna hold it up. Anyway, it has this like number that cycles through, and it's just an app on your phone. The great thing about that is even if your phone gets disconnected from the internet, because it's whatever magical formulaic technology, you can still use that number to get in, but they need their login, their password, and then something else, either a text or something on an app. And it's not, I think one day, I think some people actually like the little keys, but anyway, go ahead, John.
Yeah, and to give some detail, the app that Jeff showed is called Google Authenticator. There are a number of them, and they're called TOTP, and I'll write that in the chat so people can see what that is.
Oh, sorry, Sean. I'm interrupting you again. Sorry. I forgot to, this is where we should mention that Okta sent around an announcement. So that whole idea of single sign-on, you log into one place with a lot of checks, and then it lets you in other places. Like you get your ID checked once, and then you get to go to, you know, all the places at the spa. Okta OKTA, which I'll put in there, has just said, I don't know, they have some kind of deal. I don't get a discount. They have some kind of deal going on where I think they're waiving the sign up fee or something. That is, if you haven't decided on Microsoft Azure AD or Google single sign on, you might want to take a look at that. Okay, sorry, John. MDM.
Sure. We recommend that you use a PIN for your phone. This is especially important if you have multi-factor authentication set up, so that your phone is protected and the codes that get sent are protected. Really important if people have email on their phones, you know, especially if they're getting client information over that email. We recommend at least 6 digits or letters for the phone pins, although 4 pins is 4 digits is far better than nothing. Fingerprint and Face ID is also great. So just basically, you know, if something to prevent a person, if you drop your phone somewhere, from having full access into, you know, LegalServer, their client emails, or you know, anything else that that person might have on their mobile device. Same thing with tablets. A lot of people are working from tablets these days, so you wouldn't want, you know, a lost tablet to be able to let someone into your confidential case information. The next thing on there is that we recommend against using really old devices. Kind of depends on the manufacturer, but you should only use a phone or tablet that is still getting security updates. Otherwise, they're really easy to hack. So, and again, that can lead to information getting leaked out, and that's not really good. Not sure of any easy ways to check on that. I think, you know, on Apple devices, it'll tell you. Android kind of depends on the manufacturer. Anything else on that, Jeff?
Nope, I was just, somebody had asked what MDM stood for. It's mobile device management, and the different office suites. If you go in there, you actually typically can set and enforce policies. And so if people do try to connect their work email to their phone, it'll say, nope, you can't do that because your device doesn't meet the policy yet. So go ahead. Yes,
good for compliance. Another thing that is kind of something people don't think about is the software on their routers, which is, you know, the device that connects to your phone line or cable line or fiber and routes internet traffic. If you know, rent the device from, say, Xfinity or someone else, you're probably all set here. If you have something really old that you purchased that may seem to work just fine, it's kind of a bad idea to keep using that if it is no longer getting updates. Not all of them update on their own, you know, with the exception of the ones that you're being provided with. So if you purchased your own hardware, make sure you update that regularly. And if no updates have been available for a long time, it's time to replace it, even if it does seem to work just fine. The next thing would be for Wi-Fi. So I know not everyone even has a password on their Wi-Fi. That is actually really important because of the way the Wi-Fi traffic works. If you have no password, other people can see some of the things you're doing and see some of that traffic. If there are also different grades of passwords. The most current accepted one is called WPA2. If you have a router that is less than about 7 years old and is requiring a password, it's probably great. And again, if you're using something from like your cable company or internet provider and haven't bought your own, you're probably also all set there.
Awesome, thank you. So for those of you who are, thinking about those policies, which can take way too long to write, a short one might include some of these things like, hey, you're working from home, please check your router to see if it's updated. Make sure you have a password on your home Wi-Fi, whatever you're connecting to, for instance. Okay, so and I see there's a question, some staff don't have an internet connection. So one thing you could do, I mean, now we're talking dollars, right? But you could get them a hotspot, right? So sign up with basically a phone provider for them to take a hotspot that uses a cell phone signal essentially and turns it into internet. Otherwise, these days, none of this is going to work without some kind of internet connection to work remotely, unless they're going to tote paper home and I guess, I don't know, somehow get it back to the office without being in a crowd. Any security questions for John? Yep, go ahead.
Or I guess just one piece to add on security is just all of this is super, super important, but also don't forget to overlook physical security, or don't overlook physical security rather. Especially, right, again, with kids home and other family members home, right? If you are working in a more public space, make sure to shut down, lock up, all the above, and make sure that if you do have a laptop that it's getting put away, just to make sure that there isn't any accidental data leak within the household.
Yeah, one additional thing that we don't have on here is that any laptops or other devices, computers, even if it is in your locked home, should have a password and a screensaver timeout. One example there would be if someone breaks into your worker's home and steals their computer, do you want to have to notify every one of your clients that their data may have been lost? But if they have encryption and a password, you just go on with the rest of your day. So it can make a big difference there.
Yep, you go on with the rest of your day after you report to somebody that happened, that a computer that you use for work stuff got stolen, because we still want to know. But yeah, so that's important. It's not, personally, I don't let anybody else touch my work machine, but I could, because if my hard drive's encrypted and I'm logging in just as myself, and the one I use, of course, my sort of home directory is encrypted itself, that person actually could use my machine and shouldn't be able to see anything they're not supposed to see. But if I don't have a screen lock and a password, then anyone can sit down and just be me and see all the stuff that they're not supposed to see. So if you encrypt it and you make sure that there's a login, you should be in pretty good shape if something bad happens. Any security questions for lead developer and super awesome fella John? Awesome. I did want to, just going to bring up and then go right past the idea of a VPN. If you have, it's possible to make kind of like a tunnel from you to another spot on the internet that's got a little extra protection of the data inside. For LegalServer, you do not have to access LegalServer via a VPN unless your workplace says you have to. If your browser's up to date, it should be perfectly secure for you to communicate from your screen to LegalServer, and lots of other web-based tools enforce HTTPS and some other standards that force a pretty high level of protection as you're accessing things via the internet. If you have raw files that you need to access on like a server, then you're probably going to be talking about VPN software. Not that there's anything wrong with a VPN, but given the emergency you're in, if you're using secure browser and secure tools, research it, but you probably don't need it tomorrow in order to be up and running. Does that sound about right, John?
Yeah, yes, the encryption that we use when you connect to LegalServer, we verify that it meets all sorts of standards. So if you can connect, that data is safe as far as internet traffic is concerned.
No, great, thank you. And all major platforms will do the same. All right, so this is your turn to challenge us. I want to thank you very much, John Snell. What's something you think you're not going to be able to do remotely? Stump the chumps, as our dear departed friends from Car Talk would say. I don't think I can send mail remotely. That's true. That's true. I don't think you can, I can't think of a service that actually goes from your computer to snail mail. I will say if anybody wants to start what should have happened a long time ago, start the revolution towards encrypted email, there is this thing called PGP. It's been around a long time. There are ways to send email much more securely. Overall, we have to presume that sending email is kind of like sending a postcard, but that doesn't mean you can't talk to clients via email. It just means you can send, my opinion is, you can send a client an email that says, be sure to bring, Jane's social security card with you to court. You probably wouldn't want to email them and say, could you send me Jane's social security number, right? Those are two different things. So, but no, mail, don't have that one. Can you scan directly to OneDrive or another? One thing that Anna, you know what? No, I'm going to say it anyway. I thought it was pretty cool. I use Outlook in a different life, and I think it makes it pretty easy in OneDrive. I take a picture with my phone, and it pretty easily goes straight up into OneDrive. So I use that instead of scanning.
And Google Drive has the same functionality too, where you can take a picture and it just drops right in. And it's pretty clean. I've never had a problem with it, so definitely recommend it.
Great. Question on using Google Voice. I think Google Voice is great. I think if you're using G Suite, that's a no-brainer. I think it's even low cost or very low cost or free to have your workers have, somebody's got a really loud background, so might have to find, okay, there we go. I lost my train of thought.
Google Voice.
Yep, Google Voice works really well. And then your clients don't have your workers' individual phone number. It's tough if they don't have email, but I have to say, I challenge you all to give this a whirl. If you're using Hangouts or Zoom, invite your client to that call with a phone number, right? So they have a password for the phone number. In other words, that might be that way your workers don't have to call from their personal phone, so the clients don't have their personal phone, which is always something they're sensitive about.
And Zoom accounts, the non-pro, just personal Zoom accounts, those can support a one-on-one meeting just fine without paying. So like that model, you wouldn't necessarily need to get everybody pro Zoom accounts to do that.
Right, that's true. Print, yeah, so you can drag a PDF into LegalServer, into the hotspot on the Documents tab, and your PDF can go straight up into LegalServer land. Of course, you need to be in a browser. Affidavits, yes, tough one. The problem with affidavits is, of course, the courts have not universally recognized the idea that a digital signature means anything. Two different kinds of digital signatures. There's wiggle your finger and make a picture. There's another kind of digital signature where you actually have to prove who you are and sign up with a service. It's a much more, your signature is actually a big block of code. Guarantee that's where things are going though. There's going to be a few identity providers that are considered authoritative at some point, where there's such a thing as, and it does exist out in other worlds, but just not in general in the court system yet. So I'm sorry. Move from OneDrive to LegalServer. Not automatically. Not automatically. Okay. All right. I think we did okay. And anything, sorry, I took all those. I'm such a pig. I'm sorry. Anything else you want to add to those?
No, all good.
Great. I will share around the recording. Here, why don't you take this one, Anna? Oh, whoops, no, it's a LegalServer question. Barcode scanning is interesting, right? Like we all thought it was going to be the future. There are a few programs that are using it. Overall, we just haven't seen it. It didn't get the adoption we thought. We thought that all documents everywhere were going to barcode, and that's how we're going to track them. One of the things that happened is in fancy scanning, scanners got basically artificial intelligence attached to them, so they can do things like figure out what a document is for and where it lives without a barcode. Yes, you can have a copy of this. It's at a short link, which I will go back to right at the very, very top before we cruise on here. It is at tinyurl.com/remote-work-2020, and I will put it here in the chat too. So you can access this whenever you want and tell us how we did. I mean, there are people whose job is to do this kind of teaching. I just thought, we're a couple of folks who do this stuff all the time. And Michelle Giesemann, I know there's other people on the call who do as well, but I know you have a remote team around the world because we work with your UK group as well. If there's something you think we missed, I'd love for you to unmute yourself and jump in.
No, this has been super helpful, and thank you for sharing the materials too. I'm going to definitely share this more broadly with our team members. Thank you both.
Awesome, thank you. Did I do the technology shortlist? Yeah, okay. Would you like to do this one, Anna?
Sure. I think, right, so we wanted to kind of wrap this up by coming up with a quick kind of punch list of things that we can tackle as we're making this change. As we talked about earlier, set policies on hours, presence, and calendaring. Make sure those expectations are clear and check in with your staff regularly on if that's working for them. Pick a real-time chat platform, as Jeff alluded to earlier. I'm not going to say impossible, but very well could be impossible to continue to conduct work without some way to have real-time chat. Look at the tools you have, look at how they're working for you. If you don't have something that supports real-time chat, look into the ones that we talked about today. Encourage users to create a productive workspace. Again, this may not necessarily be possible for everybody given what their living situation is, but definitely encourage it where possible. Create a BYOD, bring your own device and policy and checklist, right? So make sure that, I imagine there's going to be a lot of circumstances where people are using their own computers. So if they are, make sure that they are aware of how they can protect the client data that they're going to be working on in ways that John discussed earlier. Utilize cloud-based workspaces where possible. I'm all for being super thoughtful and super deliberate about your move to a cloud-based platform. But in this situation, if people just need to be able to access their documents, you need to just get them there. And then we can have the conversations about how to make sure that we're doing that effective and efficiently. And along those same lines, right, start putting that those important documents and the other things that you want people to access in your new workspace, right? So making sure that we're making all of that readily available and building it into the culture and the routine of our staff.
No, and make it attractive, right? Oh, there's a new the vacation policy has been updated, and it's in the team drive. People will go figure out a way to go find that. I promise. So, you got to put some little honey there for folks. Yeah, great. Yeah, I hate to say it, but there's probably only a few people in the country who like wake up in the morning. If you're the kind of person who's like, I wonder what new 0-day attacks there are for self-hosted blah blah blah, then you should be hosting your own stuff. This opinion piece begins here. I think that overall, for most of us, using a service where they have engineers who are doing nothing but watching for hacks and keep trying to be up 24/7 is a pretty good value proposition, put it that way. All right, the mindset shortlist. So those are like some technology ones. If you're only going to do a few things, I'd do those. You can get lots and lots of work done as an effective remote team. You really can. I don't know that I've ever been with a group of people who gets more done in a week than my team here at LegalServer, and we are in 4 time zones, you know, work on really thorny, difficult projects, and you can do it as a remote team. You can maintain visibility in what people are doing, and you can keep a team spirit. I feel that way. I hope a lot of y'all do. That you know, people really jump in and help each other and feel connected to each other, despite the fact that we are remote. I haven't even met. Let's see. Is there anybody? Yeah, there's 1 or 2 staff members that I've never been in the same physical place with. You need to get mentally limber. Like if everybody's got to be a little bit flexible in order to get on the same horse, right? If Teams is chosen instead of Slack and you like Slack better, tough, right? People have got to decide in the interest of the mission that we're gonna use the same tools in a similar way at least. And this is a time to think about projects that you can do remotely, and that you've been maybe wanting to do, and there's probably some work that you just can't get done. So maybe that leaves a little room for some things that long-term projects that have been waiting, and maybe this is a time that you have a project that can work remotely that you can bring up. And some workers, I want to say this nice and loud, some workers are going to prefer this environment. There are some people who have interesting challenges at home. They might have somebody that they need to, you know, a loved one that they need to check in on regularly, for whom this is going to be a much better work environment. It's going to be much more supportive of them. You may have workers who don't have reliable transportation and who stress out every week on whether their car is going to break down on the way to work. You may have people for whom this is going to be, who do have a long commute, for whom this is going to mean 2 more hours at home and not in the car. So, you know, a challenge is to think of this as an opportunity that's actually going to improve the lives of some of your workers if you can do it well. I want to point out that we are definitely not the first people to think about all this. There's some, all of these are fairly short and good. The remote legal support one is more in depth, but all 3 of these references at the end, Stack Overflow, TechSoup, and this remote legal support, kind of like a white paper at Connecting Justice Communities, I thought were really good resources. So we are happy to take questions. I'm going to stop the recording in just a little bit, but see how good the questions are before I hit the button. Anything else, Anna, you wanted to add before we let the peanut gallery in?
No, I think that all sounds good. I think that you wrapped that up on a really good note. So thanks.
Thanks. All right. Questions, team. If you'd like to put it in chat, that's fine. If you want to feel wild and want to unmute yourself, that's cool. Just please mute yourself again when you're done asking your questions. Questions for us? Okay, the recording is, so this same link, if you go to the permalink, I'll go all the way back up to the top. I'm going to put a link to the recording right here on the front page too. So you only need 1 link to remember. It's in chat right now, and it's this one right here. So if you come to, this link here in about 30 minutes, Zoom will be done compiling the recording. I will have the hyperlink to the audio and visual. Okay. And next thing you gotta know is you gotta know how to chair dance.
Or chair yoga. I've done some great
conference.
I've done some great at your desk 5-minute yoga. It's really, it can be really nice between stressful phone calls.
Yeah. Required, right? Required. Sometimes, you know, you just don't get that chance for the quite as impersonal decompression, but that way.
Oh, someone had a question about getting started with Zoom meetings. if you go to their website is zoom.us, and you can get an account there. You can get a personal account to just try and test it out. And you download an application onto your desktop, and there's options to, they make it very easy. There's 4 buttons, like start a meeting, schedule a meeting, settings, and one other button. And it can be, and it's really straightforward to create invites and get meetings scheduled. But yeah, go to zoom.us, and they have pretty good documentation and pretty good support as well.
Let's see if I have annotations turned. I think I do have annotation turned on. So if anybody, I'm going to just, actually I'll let this continue, but if you wiggle your mouse around on the controls, you may find that you can actually grab a little highlighter or a pencil, and you can actually annotate this meeting. Feel free to try it if you like. You can do remote control also through Zoom and others. This isn't the only one. We're not trying to sell Zoom. Uses of adding basic users to a pro account. It can, so one thing about having the basic users is they can have meetings of up to 45 minutes. And it will, your basic users will end up installing Zoom, and the application version of it is a richer experience, right? So they'll have it ready, and they'll probably become more facile with using the software. So even if you left some people at basic, if they had the chance to use that a little bit, I think you'll find that they integrate with your other meetings a little bit better. And then if you rely on it, I think you'll find it's just the cost of doing business, and most of your team will end up with a subscription to either this or Hangouts or one of the others. Mm-hmm. What's a Skype? What is it for? Is it in? So it was Skype for meetings. What is it now in Microsoft?
Skype for Business, but they're folding that into Teams ultimately. So. Okay.
All right. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording. I hope this was helpful. And we, the whole reason we're doing this is because we have heard the stress and anxiety from our clients and people we serve who are taking on this really big task of changing how they do things suddenly. So we're just motivated to try to share what we know. I hope it was helpful. Feel free to share this everywhere. And we're all doing it for each other, right? The reason we're doing this and not going into the office, even though we're not feeling well, is because we don't want to. Some of us are unbelievably young and healthy, but even us, right? I don't want to be the carrier that takes a deadly virus to some other community and ends up getting more people sick. So we're all deciding to isolate ourselves a bit, also really for the good of everybody else, especially the people who public defenders and legal aid agencies help. I can't imagine what it would be like right now to be housing insecure and have difficulties already with your health benefits and be really, really low income, and also be facing food shortages, and you go use your food stamps and the food isn't there. It's an unbelievably hard time. So we're really privileged to get to help you help the people who are going to be really facing challenges over the next couple months. So. Thank you very much. All right, y'all. I hope you all have a good rest of your day.